Marketing isn't what you think it is. And that's exactly what my guest today, Gio, is going to be sharing. Now, Gio, let's just jump right into it. What was that you were sharing with me just a second ago about your philosophy behind marketing?
Well, it's counterintuitive and maybe even controversial, but I believe that marketing is what happens after someone pays you.
Marketing happening after someone pays you. Now, here's what I can tell you. I was just at one of Gio's events. Now, Gio runs Archangel Mastermind and also the Destiny events, which are in Austin, Toronto, and coming to a lot of other amazing cities across the US. He's a fellow escape room enthusiast, and he also hosts a special event called Top Secret. So I was just out in Top Secret, Miami. And here's the crazy thing with the event. I didn't know what the event was even going to be, who else was going to be there, what the content was, what we were going to do, even what hotel we were going to stay in. It was all top secret. So let's start there. And then we're going to unpack a little bit more about the marketing happening after someone pays you. So make sure you stick around. There's so much gold in this episode. But we're going to cover that in just a second. Let's start off with where the idea for a top secret event came from.
So I've been producing events my whole life, 31 years. And for people like us, I've been producing events for 11 years. And they're either super curated, invite only, high level, or giant stage productions where you've spoken on my big event stage too. And to put it bluntly, I get bored, meaning I can't attend events. When you do what I do, it's very hard for me to sit in a room for 2 days straight listening to speakers. So I designed the event that I dreamed or I wished that I could attend, where essentially the premise is I'll tell you a date to show up in a specific city, like fly to Miami on this day, and then I will customize an experience for every single attendee based on their lifestyle preferences, based on who they need to connect with, based on whatever their dreams and goals are. So I can make sure those things happen too. And it feels like you're in a story and it feels like everything is taken care of so you don't have to think. And all of the fluff and boring bits of a typical event, I took all that away, especially for introverts who have maybe trouble connecting with other people. And you don't know anything and it unveils like a film. So if you go watch a movie and it's a great movie, you don't get the table of contents first. You don't get the agenda of the film. You just let the story unfold. And that's how this event happens. We pick you up at the airport, take you to a surprise 5-star hotel, tell you every hour where to be, who to connect with, what's happening. And by the end of it, you have a lifelong memory.
Absolutely. I can say firsthand, it was really a magical experience. And as somebody who usually plans things a little more in advance, honestly, it was just a really cool way to let go for a second, especially as entrepreneurs. Sometimes we lean in, we can really want to control everything. It's just, hey, let's let go for a second and, really let this story and this movie play out in front of you. And I think it was definitely a really special event. Actually, you draw a lot of your inspiration from movies. I remember one of the first conversations we had was about movies. And I also think that, I know you've shared this, it also pertains so well with marketing, with other elements, but, what got you into movies and how do you connect movies to business, to events, to marketing? What's that connection?
I fell in love with film when I was a kid. The first movie I ever saw was The Never-Ending Story in a theater. Over the past 17 years, I've had this unique hobby where by myself, I'll go to a matinee film at a cinema and watch whatever came out every single week, with the exception of during COVID, because I couldn't. This is just my form of escape and creativity. And I think, I ask, why do we love film or movies? Why do we love even fictional stories? And we love story. There's a story component that creates this unique empathy. Like imagine you're in a movie theater, something's happening on the screen and you start crying or you start laughing, but nothing's actually happened to you. We have this really cool human effect of being able to connect with other people based on story. And doing what you do, you get it too, right? And it's why we connect on social media. It's why we love video, YouTube, or anything online that is based on delivering a story because we can empathize with the characters. We become them. And I treat all of my live events like we are designing a story arc for our attendees to be on a journey, to be on a transformative journey. And I start with that premise, and it makes my planning so much more fun because I get to take people on a journey.
Absolutely. And we're going to cover this in a second, but you've actually produced some of your own movies and films, and we're going to talk about that. And I know some of our listeners and viewers are going to be really interested in what that process was like, but also how you envision something and then create it. But before we do that, we kind of opened a loop right at the beginning where we talked about your philosophy on marketing and how it really starts after somebody pays you, which I think is very contrary to what a lot of other people are saying. And because I've been around you, I think I know some of what you're about to say, but why don't you unpack that a little bit and share and expand on that philosophy?
For sure. I love to pour a lot of marketing budget into experience, especially for our events, but really any business can do this. Because if you have a client or a customer that interacts with your product or service or you and has their mind blown and feels like they've been transformed and feels like they are forever changed and have so much gratitude for you and what you've done for them and see and feel how much you care about them, they can't wait to tell other people. And they can't wait to deepen their relationship with you because it's in their best interest and it elevates their status to do so. So, you spoke at our big Toronto event last September. We had a sold out house, like 1,500 people. And at the end of the event, and I think you may have seen me offer this, I said, listen, our next event is a year from now, next September 13th. You can get your tickets now. That was my quote unquote pitch. And 500 people on the spot bought a ticket. A third of the people, without knowing who the speakers are, anything about the event other than the date and the city. And to me, that is marketing. It's creating something remarkable that people want to be a part of, that allows them to go further into a relationship with you. So that's exactly the philosophy on it. And it's not just for events, it could be for any kind of product.
Absolutely. And it builds that trust and that word of mouth, which I think these days a lot of people, especially with digital, and we talk a lot about ads, here as well, that word of mouth is so powerful. I remember before I even went to the first event of yours that I went to, which was the event in Austin almost a year ago. And I remember I heard from multiple people, and especially one of my mentors, who as well, Alex Sharfin, basically, but not just him, multiple people were telling me, you have to go to a Geo event. You have to go to a Geo event. And I think that's one of the things that is oftentimes underappreciated, but is so powerful, is that real awe-inspiring moment of an event like that. And I can tell you, I talked more about the top secret event in Miami that I attended before and after the event than probably any other event that I've attended. And part of that was the concept. It was a top secret event. I had more to say about an event that I didn't even know was going to happen before the event. I told a bunch of people, and then of course they all wanted to know what happened after the event. And then I told them how amazing it was, and all the different pieces that went into it. I remember we were talking about what went into that, which I actually want to unpack some of that as well. But you're exactly right. And I also remember being in that crowd, where a third of the people bought their tickets for the event next year. And I think that really just shows the power. Now, how can people apply this to their own businesses? Because I know you also have so many different entrepreneurs that you work with and are in your mastermind. You're constantly empowering them. Let's say you were talking to one of them, is the person listening or watching this. How can they apply that to their business?
Yeah, I think it depends on the industry. I'll give a couple of examples. I'll actually use my wife as an example. So she used to run a very successful health clinic, brick and mortar in downtown Toronto, one of the best in the country. And people would come in with some kind of pain. And she had, chiropractic and massage and different modalities. And she would design a 3-month package for them, a care plan that allowed them to go from where they were to a place of feeling healthy. And on the day they came in, she would say, listen, this is the story we're going to create for you in the next 3 months. And in 3 months, when you are healed, when you feel incredible, I want you to tell me your story. And then I want you to recommend one other person then that you want to give this same kind of story to. So it's planting the seed in the present when someone became a client for a future referral opportunity, or maybe even more. And then after the 3 months, she would get them to write their story on a chalkboard, take a photo of them with a giant smile, and had this wall full of photos of these patients who have been transformed, right? And then they were given that photo to share. So imagine a patient who's been healed sending that photo to a friend saying, listen, I just had the most incredible experience. You have to come check out this clinic, right? So the idea is, how can you give your transformed clients the opportunity to elevate their status with the people they know by making a connection to you? And if you can reverse engineer those moments and make it very easy for them, and obviously deliver something remarkable. So they have something to talk about. When you have all those items in place, you can scale really quickly. Even for people who do a ton of ads, like the ads then amplify all of this, right? And imagine what's possible then.
Exactly. I think that's one of the key principles, especially, with doing this podcast, Marketing Minds podcast. Everybody has all of these amazing different strategies and different things, but they all build on each other. So when you start incorporating the types of things that you're talking about into the actual client experience, and then you have marketing on the front end when you're actually bringing in with ads, and then you have this marketing once they become a client and you're basically delivering that incredible experience, then it's really going to amplify everything. And I'm really curious, kind of going back to some of your early events, and I know I met different people in the mastermind that were at some of those early events. But could you share a little bit of what that experience was like and your kind of backstory to bring you to today, where you're hosting these big 1,500 person, multiple thousand people events? I know you're going to do a really big one here in Austin coming up. But what got you to this point? Could you share that with the listeners?
Oh, for sure. So I'll give a bit of origin too. My very first event, I was 17 years old, and that was 31 years ago in high school, producing dance parties for teenagers. And my very first event had 1,000 people. And if you go further back, I used to get bullied a lot in my elementary schools, and because I moved around a lot. So I think from that pain of being the new kid a lot, I discovered how to get people to like me and how to make a lot of friends. So that by the time I was in high school, everyone knew me. And I started going to other parties thinking, well, this is awesome. I could do this. And I just loved production. And I had the highest level of bliss you can ever experience from my first one, thinking, I can't believe I get to have this much fun and make money, which was insane for a 17-year-old. And by the time I was 20, our events had 5,000 people a week. We had these big productions, big shows. Sometimes they were concerts, all like kind of dance music. And I hung up my partying production to get, to go to university and get a typical education. That led me into one of the best jobs ever, running the marketing at a place called Strategic Coach, which is led by a guy named Dan Sullivan. And that's where, and this is like in the early 2000s, and I started meeting people who are now friends like Joe Polish and different people. And I left that job because for people like us, we're very unemployable. So I thought, I know I'm an entrepreneur. I've been running a business for a long time. I need to go all in on marketing, coaching, and consulting and business coaching. And that's what I did. But I always had the bug to do events. So Teen launched our first Archangel event in Toronto as almost a side thing. And then it just kind of blew up. So that by 2016, we hosted our first summit, had 1,500 people there, then 2,000, 2,500, 3,000. And, the dream is to scale exponentially now from here, which we can talk about. But I love bringing incredible people together. I love blowing people's minds. And I love doing really big things.
I love it. I do want to dive into your future vision in just a second, because it really is a big vision. I think that it's also a really great example for people, who are watching this or listening to this that are looking to craft a big vision. I also want to talk about that as well. I think one of the superpowers that you have is really creating amazing experiences and connections and events like these. How did you, of course, superpowers, like there's a degree where you have this innate ability, but you also kind of cultivate it and refine it over time. What would you say are some of the biggest things that are natural to you that aren't really natural to other people that you could share?
One is I have a gift for connection. And this took me a long time to actually figure out. I think when someone has a gift or superpower or very special talent, whatever language you want to use, Dan would say unique ability, because it comes so easy to you, you just assume it's easy for other people. And you disregard it as something special. But when you have enough people comment, in my case, so many people saying, you're so good at connecting people. Once I accepted it, and then I started treating it like a skill to harness and to practice, then it became a superpower. Right. So that's one of them, and bringing people together. And then I think dreaming really big is something that I do normally that other people struggle with. A lot of times because people are worried about what other people will think or say. And I used to worry about those things, and now I don't. So now I have impossible goals and like ridiculous dreams, but I've always had them anyways. And I just find a way to reverse engineer them. And I think the strategy of reverse engineering something impossible is one of my strengths.
I love that. And I think anybody, myself included, and I know we've talked a little bit about this as well, but I think anybody listening or watching this wants to learn more about that. right? Achieving the impossible. And I'll tell you a quote that I heard from Alex Sharfin when he was describing you, because when I had first gone to your very first event, and it was amazing, and you shared a vision, which I'll ask you to share in a second, right? Where you're going to have, we'll let you share it. We'll let you share it in a second. But it was a very, very big vision. And I asked Alex, and I said, do you think Gio is going to do that? Like, especially like, because with how big he's like, and he said, Alex, let me put it this way. I've never seen Gio not do something he set his mind to. And the other thing too is, if you know Alex, well, he also has big visions, aspirations. He's also a realist too when it comes to operations and all these things. So for him to say that, he would not say that lightly, right? He would call out like if people are kind of blowing smoke or all these different things. But him to say, hey, I've never seen you not do something you set your mind to. And of course, we talked about how you've already built multi-thousand person events, which in of itself is a massive achievement. Before we get into that big vision, which we'll get into right after this, but what is that process that you have for having a big vision and then bringing it to reality? Is there a secret sauce? Is there something you know? Yes. What would you share with everybody?
Yes. 14 years ago, or around there, I saw a video on YouTube back in the early days, which blew my mind. And I'll dig it up so you can, if you want to link it. It was this guy who I think was a scientist and talking about physics and force of dominoes, of all things, right? So if you ever seen someone line up dominoes, you hit the first one and it has enough force to hit the second. But he said one domino can knock over another one that's 1.6 times bigger. And he started with a tiny one, knocked it over, and it just kept hitting a bigger and bigger. And the last one was like 10 feet tall. And he said, this can keep going, like it could be a mile high. And as long as the proportions are right, putting a little bit of force at the beginning could have a massive output at the end. And I took that to think, that's how I can plan ridiculous goal. The ridiculous goal is the last domino. You only have to figure out what are the leverage points along the way, right? So I'll give you a perfect example. Our first big Archangel Summit in 2016, I said, I have to have over 1,000 attendees. I didn't have any social media following, or at least a big one. I had my network and I thought, how do I do this? All of my events have always been 1 to 200 people. So this is how I reversed engineered that. That was my last domino, over 1,000 people. And I said, to have an event that has over 1,000 people, I need to invite community builders or thought leaders or people who already have the community that I want to attract. How do I get them to say yes to coming? Well, the next domino before that was I should probably have them speak. And then I said, how do I get them to want to speak? And I thought I should probably have some giant named thought leaders on stage that would want them to, like, they'd love to share the stage with them. And then I thought, what was the first domino? I said, I need one incredible speaker to say yes. And this is 2016. And that one person was Gary Vaynerchuk. So then I'm like, okay, well, what's the leverage for Gary? And he was launching a book that year. So I said, Gary, if I buy, I think it was like 3,000 copies of your book, would you speak at my event? He's like, F yeah. Gary swears. So I had Gary. And then my dream come true was to have Seth Godin speak at one of my events. This is actually an incredible story. Let me share how I invited him, because I didn't know him. I had no connection to him. So how do you invite one of the best marketers on the planet to speak at your event, knowing, by the way, he hates flying? And this event was in Toronto and he's in New York. And the only thing I knew was that he checks his email. Like he's a weirdo where if you email him, he'll actually check his email. So let me forward you my email to him later on if you want. But the email was something along the lines of, Seth, I'm your biggest fan and you've heard that a million times. And I've read all your books and I'm sure you've heard that a million times. But here's the thing you haven't heard a million times. I'm your case study. And I literally showed him how not only reading his books, but applying the wisdom of his books allowed me to build everything I've built that led me to producing this event. And I said, I couldn't have been where I am if I wasn't your student. And I would love for this to come full circle for you to speak at the event that only exists because I read your books. And his response was something like, how do I say no to this? And then he came to speak and he's spoken, a bunch of times. And now I can't say we're friends. I don't like when people say that, but he answers my messages and he's been a guest in our council group a bunch of times. And I love him. He's still my favorite author. And I've learned more from him than anybody else. Right. So I invited Gary and then I invited Seth. And then I invited Robin Sharma, who at the time, again, like another huge speaker. And then I had my 3 giant, well-known speakers. And then I started asking people like my friend Jason Gaynor, who has his MMT group, and then JJ Virgin, who has her mastermind, and then Natalie McNeil, who has her. So a lot of my friends, these are friends of mine who have communities that they would love to invite to the event. And it was a huge success. And I just kept building that way and making sure that, going back to what I said earlier, when you can elevate someone's status to their people, it's a win-win-win-win-win, right? I keep doing this and it keeps working. And I make sure that the experience is the best ever. And I make sure that everyone has a great time. And then I even for speakers backstage, like we'll do photo shoots for our speakers backstage for headshots, and we'll do really cool things that are unique and different to make the event stand out for everybody.
Yeah. That's one thing that I think is really key. And you see is that you're focused on the event experience for every single person and also for the speakers, which is kind of interesting. But there are a lot of events that, they don't really put as much, once they have the speaker, they don't put as much thought into that, or at least curating something that would be surprising to them. They might have all the standard things, but curating that really cool experience. And I remember like the green room mastermind, speakers come together before the event and mastermind with your council. And it's one of those things where it all comes together and there's actually a big tangible takeaway. At many events, speakers are in and out. But oftentimes what I've seen at your events, and there's some notable exceptions, some people, but at the same time, like almost all the people are like there the whole time, which is so remarkable because I think you see people on the speaking circuit, they're kind of in and out, but you have all these incredible people that are actually there and, they're the entire time. And one thing I want to talk about in a second is how you cultivate and curate these connections and relationships and also keep them going. Because I think that's something some people struggle with is they'll make a connection, but, to keep that going. But I promise I'd let you, share what you're working on right now. And I want to hear more because every time I hear it, I feel like the vision grows bigger and bigger and bigger. What is your big grand vision and what does that look like?
So I wanted to set some 10-year impossible goals, and that time frame may be shortened soon because of some advice I've been getting. But one of the 10-year goals that I set last year was 1 million people attend our events, like in-person events within the 10 years. And to do that, as we're building out these larger Destiny Fest experiences, we want them to be in 12 cities and then eventually in arenas in every city. So 10,000 or more people per event, creating these really massive shows for people in our community. So that's one of the biggest ones. I also, so I'm friends with a guy named Dr. Benjamin Hardy, who's an incredible author. And his next book is on achieving impossible goals. And I had a chat with him like 3 days ago. In that conversation, I said, okay, I'm going to set a really challenging goal, like super challenging, which is to sell 1 million books. And in the publishing space, selling 10,000, awesome, if you can achieve that, right? Most people don't get to 100,000 and then very few get to 1 million. So I thought that's one of the other impossible goals. And then winning a Nobel Peace Prize is the third impossible goal. So those are my 3 current impossible goals.
I love it. And to think about all of the impact that all of these goals is going to create. You talked about the impact that, Seth Godin's book had on you. Think about the impact your books will have on other people. And then same thing with the events. I've seen firsthand the impact that the event has had, not just on me, but the other people around that, to a degree that, I've been telling, as many people as possible, especially the one in Austin, that they have to be at that event. And we're going to be talking about this afterwards because I need that link to send it, to tell people, like, here's the event. You got to be there. But I think that when you look at that degree of impact, that ripple effect that gets created, I think that's really exciting. Do you think a lot about the impact? And I know the answer. This is kind of a loaded question because I already know the answer, but just for the listeners here too. But like, how do you think about that impact that is created when you achieve these goals and when you do these big things?
Well, the maybe irony, if that's the word, is that I don't really care about the accolade. I care about creating the impact worthy of achieving the accolade, right? So Nobel Peace Prize, I don't even know how to get that, but imagine I can create so much connection and peace in the world that it deserves that prize. That's the thing I care about. 1 million tickets, I don't care about the 1 million tickets. I care about transforming 1 million lives and collecting 1 million stories, which to me is my favorite currency. Like, we all need money to do really cool things with and to make the change and the impact we want to make. I've always searched for a different currency that makes sense. Like what is an impact currency? And to me, it's stories. If I could collect 1 million stories of people who've been transformed by somehow being connected to our ecosystem, that's the biggest win ever, right? So that's why 1 million books and 1 million tickets. It's not about a New York Times bestseller type of thing. It's about 1 million lives changed.
Absolutely. And it's the crazy ones that are, like Steve Jobs talked about, right? The ones
Right.
that are really going to change the world are the ones that are crazy enough to, think that they can do it. And that's exactly what I see in you. And I already see you on this amazing path, and you have these big goals. You look at the impact that's being created. And, I know that the heart that you have, I wanted to make sure that, like, sharing that, like, when you talk about these big aspirational goals, there's a deep why behind them, which I also think is one of the reasons that you actually achieve these goals, is because it's not just for you or your own ego. You're actually going out there and creating an impact, and you're inspiring others to adopt that mission and, become evangelists for that and get excited about that. And I think that that's a really big piece. Now, we talked about relationships and cultivating those. I think this is actually a really tactical thing, because this has been a really, there's the strategy, the big picture. And I think this is going to be a really, really inspiring episode for everybody that's watching and listening. I already know just everything we've already talked about. But let's talk about tactic for a second, right? Do you have any specific tactics or strategies around first creating great relationships and connections? You already gave some examples of, bigger names and reaching out to them. So I think that's covered. But maybe, other, peers, or creating win-wins, like opportunities there. And then we'll cover how to maintain those relationships over time. But first, creating new relationships. How do you really think about that? Let's say that it's not somebody who's a big, well-known speaker. You gave a great example on that, but just creating relationships with other people doing really great things. What do you see?
I have a very specific blueprint or tactic. I'll use myself as a case study. A bunch of years ago, when I wanted to start our group called Archangel Council, part of the premise back then was, if someone's going to join, they have to be further ahead than me. Either more revenue, bigger business, more employees, bigger audience, something that was bigger than me. And then I had so much imposter syndrome of like, well, why am I doing this? Or how can I be the one to lead this if that's the premise? So I blocked myself. It made my life difficult for no reason. But then I had this aha moment where I realized because I started building the group and then it was working. And I thought, what's happening? And I realized nobody in the group cares that they are ahead of me in some way. They only care that I can get them ahead. Meaning every single person is on a path and they have a bigger and better future that they want to get to. If you become useful in getting someone further down their own path, you can build and deepen a relationship with them. And then you become a valued source, a connection for them. And I constantly care about that path. The more I know about someone's path, the more I can help them further down the path, either with anything like connection, resource, advice, guidance. And again, that's where I use my superpowers, right? So I may not have a giant audience yet. I don't need one. I just need to have the right wisdom to help someone further down their path. And that it's the most awesome business model too, for any business. Like, it doesn't matter what you do or who you are. And because why do people connect with celebrities, for example? If someone is a famous Hollywood actor, they still need a fitness coach, right? They still need a lawyer. They still need whatever they need, despite who they are. If you become a valuable resource for people, and then it's way more useful to be valuable to people who have a lot more to invest. And if you start at that place, it's easier.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. And I think one thing that some people might struggle with after they've done it, they make the connection, how they maintain that. Have you noticed a certain cadence or rhythm or way to really keep those relationships strong? And you mentioned providing value, but is there a way you look at that, or a formula, or is it case by case? What do you think about with maintaining those types of
I don't know if there's there probably is one. I think I just kind of go with the flow for
Yeah.
myself. And I think everyone's different, where some people want more touch points, some people don't need it. In the end, I think, if it's weird to call this a strategy, but the strategy is to care.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. And
and
take
make
a step
people,
back, humanizing this a little. Like, it's just, I think that people struggle though, because they meet somebody awesome and they do want to support, but then, people get busy, their lives get busy. So I think approaching it from that angle, not necessarily like you're looking to get something from someone, you're actually looking to provide value, but from that perspective, is there a way that you, and it sounds like you're tailoring this individually to each person.
Right. I do. Yeah.
Excellent. Is there,
I do see it's in our worlds, everyone's talking about scaling and automating and these kinds of things, and that's useful. But there are certain things, like the more you show people you care in a way that can't be scaled, the deeper the relationship goes. Perfect example, actually, Top Secret Miami that you attended.
Yeah.
My team and I sent every single attendee a text message on a regular, like every hour or 2 hours, saying where to be next. And it was custom for every single attendee. We did not automate that. It wasn't a computer. It wasn't an email automation. It was us manually sending messages. And people thought, no one believed that it was actually us doing it. But to me, those kinds of touches are when you show people you care and that something is human versus a machine, then it feels more valuable. And I'm not against technology at all. Like, I love technology, but I think we can use technology to automate things backstage so that we create a better front stage experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's really, I mean, the secret is caring. It's one of those things. And that is, and I know, so many people, they do care, but then they get distracted. And so it sounds like just reconnecting with that, like ask
Right.
yourself what's valuable for the people that you are, cultivating those relationships with, which you've shown, and illustrated throughout each part of that journey. So I do want to talk about your documentaries and your films, because that is just such a really amazing thing that you've done. And you talked about how movies were impactful for you for such a long time. How did this come to be that you've now created multiple of these films and documentaries? How did that come to be?
So movie producing was a secret desire of mine since I was a kid. I love movies. And one of our Archangel Council members is a guy named Nick Nanton, who is I think 22-time Emmy Award-winning director and producer. And he produced a film, I think through or with Russell Brunson, that was about human trafficking. And that film did really well. They raised a lot of money with it for charities. And he thought, well, hey, that worked with them. Gio, would you want to do something similar? I'm like, are you literally asking me to make a movie? Because you're making my dream come true. So I said, yes. And I said, but it can't be negative. It can't be tension inducing or dramatic, like human trafficking as a topic. For me, it'd have to be uplifting and motivational. So our first one together was called Dreamer, showcasing like 6 different stories of people who had really big dreams, but then made them come true, which is all about my world. And that film went on to win 3 Emmy Awards, which was mind blowing. And then we created another one called Hero, which is about Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, told through the stories of people who had incredible life transformative stories. And we're going to do a lot more documentary projects. And then I started producing narrative, like science fiction movies that we're going to use in our events that come to life during the event. And then we film during the event. So there's really cool, immersive, unique experiences that are half movie, half real life.
And I got to experience one of those firsthand at the Toronto event. And it was pretty remarkable, because you're seeing and you're watching on screen this movie play out, and then you see the same actors on the stage, and it all fits together really, really well. I think my wallet's sitting over there, but I actually have in there let me see if I can grab it. I'll grab it here.
Sure.
I have inside of my wallet. This was not planned. This is like, I actually literally have this. Is this note? It's a message from your future self, and this was handed out at the event. And it had to do with I'm not going to spoil anything with the movie and the thing, but you can look at this. You've overcome every obstacle so far. This one is no different. And this was given out in a dramatic, cinematic way, and it also ties me back to that event, which genuinely I can say is the best event that I've ever attended. Genuinely, wow. That Toronto event, I don't say it lightly. I've attended a lot of events, and best event that I've attended. Obviously, there's a lot of other great events, so I'm not putting any other ones down, but really amazing. And I keep this inside of my wallet. And sometimes you just need that reminder. And so I think events like that I did not prepare that. I literally have had that in my wallet since then. I think events like that can really it really can transform you, and it can help, because it has that real big impact and that effect. And so, I just want to say thank you. I know, I've already told you that, but it was definitely really powerful.
I'm a bit emotional. First of all, thank you for the sentiment. And I create these things I feel like I've won if someone says that was the best event ever, or even just the phrase, I was there. When someone comments, I was there, it means I made a memory. And if I can create memories, I feel like that is why I'm here. So I appreciate that so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think this is also a great segue into how people can learn more about your events and your upcoming events. But don't go anywhere, because after this, we're also going to dive into another golden nugget or two from Gio. And we're also going to talk a little bit about escape rooms and how he thinks about escape rooms. I can't have a fellow escape room enthusiast on the podcast without mentioning that as well. But yeah, Gio, like, I mean, these events have been so transformational to me. I genuinely mean it. I really encourage anybody who's watching or listening to go to one of your events. How can people find out about these events? Do you want to share maybe some of the ones that are coming up? And people might be watching this at different times, but you want to share how people can get to discover your events?
Yeah, best is to follow me on social, and then go to destiny.live. The site will have updates on future events. We have Destiny Fest Austin, which is June 4th, and then Destiny Fest Toronto, which is September 13th. And we'll have working on some other cities that are launching in 2026. And these are all going to be annual events. So we'll always have Austin, we'll always have Toronto. I think San Diego might be third, but that's we're working on that right now. So I'll keep you posted.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then top secret, same kind of thing. We don't really announce where and when, but if someone's interested, find me on social. It's $10K a ticket, all inclusive, 5-star hotels, food, everything, and you get to hang out with people like us. And just reach out and say top secret, and I'll know why you're interested.
Absolutely. Definitely encourage anybody who is watching or listening to check those out. We'll put the links in the description down below, wherever you happen to be watching this. And both of those events, like I said, the Toronto one, which is one of those, the bigger scale events, like I said, best event that I've ever attended. And then the Top Secret Miami is one of the most interesting, unique events that I've attended, because I did not know. You didn't even know. You land from the airplane and you don't know where you're going for the hotel, and actually meeting you in the airport. I didn't realize that was going to happen. And then we had another great conversation in the airport. So it's all those touch points too, and really amazing. Also, just a quick, and again, we're going to dive into these golden nuggets in a second, but just a quick thing here on the Marketing Minds podcast is to make sure that you are subscribed wherever you're listening, wherever you're watching. We, of course, have these on the YouTube channel, the Outlook YouTube channel, the Marketing Minds podcast. Make sure you turn on notifications. And we're also on Spotify and all the different streaming platforms. So make sure you are subscribed, because you're not going to want to miss any more of these conversations just like this one. All right. So, Gio, what's another big golden nugget that you want to share with everybody? Then we'll talk about escape rooms in a second. But any other big golden nugget that you want to share, or piece of wisdom?
This one is huge, and it was given to me by a good friend named Dean Jackson, who is also in our council group. He blew my mind. I was chatting with him in 2012 before we launched our Archangel company. And the strategy he shared was, what would be different if you had to create a result or an outcome before you got paid? And that was just the idea he gave me. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. So when we launched our very first ever Archangel event in 2014, this was my invitation. And I said, listen, I'm doing this event. It's a one-day event. I'm going to teach all my best marketing. This is back then. It was $500 for a ticket for the day. But the invitation said, don't pay me. Just RSVP that you're coming, attend the event, and if you think it was worth it, pay me after. And we had 120 people, and it literally kicked off my entire business, because people, and I actually started the event. This is another thing. I said, I'm going to give you all my best stuff in the first hour. If I want to make the first hour of this event so valuable that the rest of the day feels like a bonus, which is what I did. And I think I shared 60 tactics in 60 minutes in the first hour, like just flying through them, just to make sure people felt like, wow, I can't believe all these incredible ideas. And by the end of it, the majority of people paid, and they kept coming back to events. And that's how Archangel as a business kicked off. And I think that when you reduce the risk for people of taking the first step, especially if you are confident that you can create an outcome for them, then why have that barrier there, right? And I've used that since in so many different ways, but it's been a game changer.
That's really, really valuable. I love that. I would be thinking through that in my head too. And I think that's definitely an amazing golden nugget here. All right, let's talk about escape rooms, because we share a love of escape rooms. We've done an escape room together where we got the best time with no hints out here at the Escape Game Austin. in one of the rooms out here. What are your strategies for escape rooms? What do you think about escape rooms? Like anything to share? We talked a little bit about this, but we have to bring it up. We're both escape room enthusiasts. We've done many escape rooms. So any strategies or tactics there just for the listeners? Maybe they're beginners at escape rooms. And if you haven't done one yet, definitely do it. But anything that you want to share on that side?
Well, I love them because they're immersive, and any kind of immersive experience is my jam already. And then I love puzzles. I love puzzles and riddles. So I'm very good at that. And I know you're even better than me. And I think I'll enter a room and I'll always think, okay, well, it's designed for you to win, but it has to be challenging. But to win, there's patterns that you can always look for, right? So looking for things, and especially around unlocking doors or something to do with keys and doors. And usually there's combinations. And those combinations are 3, 4, or 5 digits or numbers. So looking for patterns of things in the room where you're going to lead to breaking a code that gives you a pattern of 3, 4, 5 digits. And that's usually where I start to figure out what are those things and what are they trying to like, what are the patterns in the room that are giving off a vibe of this could be a clue for something. And usually you can start off that way and pretty easily and run through.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I've noticed is entrepreneurs, people like us, and, they love like solving problems and immersive experiences. It really is such a fun thing to do with these escape rooms. And, I love that we share that love of those escape rooms. And if you're watching this and you have not done an escape room, highly encourage it, especially if you have like a team or you have clients. It's a great activity to do with other like-minded people. So yeah, last thing is there anything else that you want to share with the Marketing Minds audience, or any final words of encouragement or advice you want to impart on everybody watching or listening?
Well, it scales beyond marketing, but it's with respect to marketing yourself. Like I think that the most important thing is around identity and becoming the person that can make a really big dream happen. So when we talk about reverse engineering big goals, part of that is who do I need to become, and on an identity level. And then if, for someone who has a dream of launching a big business, how do you figure out who to become? What are the skills to acquire? And knowing, and this is the big thing, personality is a skill, right? So let's say someone has a secret desire of speaking on big stages, and I have big stages. They might think, yeah, well, people like that person and that person are on big stages and they're so good on stage and they have charisma and blah, blah, blah. I can never do that. Well, that's crap. You can totally do anything, especially leading a large company or whatever the goal is, or even being an incredible marketer, because personality isn't permanent. It is a skill you can acquire and practice, just like you practice piano or soccer or baseball. All of these are skills. And when you adopt and apply that wisdom, you can literally do anything. And most people don't care about practicing. So you'll have an edge.
I love it. I think, yeah, practicing your personality, the way that you show up, I think that's a really great thing to think about and to look at. And great parting words here. And again, Gio, thank you so much for being on the podcast, for the amazing events that you produce. We'll put all those links down below. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.